Colorful Conversations with Katie, from exploring the latest design trends to uncovering strategies for building successful ventures. We dive into the colorful world where aesthetics meet profitability, all while balancing work with life. It's a lot. Whether you're a budding designer or a savvy entrepreneur, this webcast is your go-to source for inspiration, insights, and a dash of lively conversation. And today's guest is Becca Ellison. She is the CEO of Becca Ellison Creative, a brand strategist and photographer helping service-based businesses like ours stand out from the crowd, building their personal brand in an authentic way. Attracting dream clients comes easily when you deeply understand your clients' core needs, paired with messaging and visuals that tell the story of how you can help them reach their goals. With the right strategy, you can create a thriving business where sales feel easy. Becca, welcome to the show.
Hello, hello. Thanks for having me, Katie. I'm excited to be here.
Oh, we're so excited to have you. And you make that sound so easy. And I feel like branding is kind of like nailing Jello to a wall. Like everyone's like, yeah, like that's a good thing. And we should have a brand and we should do that. And then it's like, but how? The how becomes a sticking point. And especially when it involves your personal brand, which to a lot of us in the design world, it really does, especially on the residential design side of things. So
yeah,
we're so glad to have this conversation with you. Let me just start off by asking you, when we're talking about personal brand and building a business, especially in the design world, I know a lot of people go, oh, do I really have to show my face on my website and social media? And tell me why I have to do that if you're going to make me do that. And I'm just as guilty of it as the next person, but it's easy to want to hide behind the name of your company rather than being the brand. What is the value in being that brand and being out there?
Well, when you're a small service-based business, small to even medium, because like Katie, your business is relatively a medium size, but you are still the person, like people connect with who you are, and you are the reputation that people know about. They know that you run ColorWorks, but it's your reputation. And your personal brand is more or less just that reputation. And it's a lot easier when you're a small business to connect that reputation to who you are as a human than it is to try and create this like marketing and brand monopoly attached to a name like, you know, Adidas does. Adidas can do that because they're a multi-billion-dollar company, but as a personal brand, as a service-based business, especially how you're coming to the experience, how you're coming and problem solving, how you're seeing the design space is very unique to who you are, to your personality, to the way you see the world. And so because of that, people want to, and you're going to succeed a lot better, a lot easier if people feel that connection to who you are. Now, your personal brand really is just your reputation. And like if we jumped back in a time machine to 20 years ago when the internet was not quite what it is today, you had a personal brand in the same situations, but you had a very localized, like you would go to either conferences or you would go to networking meetings and you would be doing all of this personal brand work in person, more on a one-on-one relationship base. Still your personal brand. That's what you were attaching it to. Now, because we're online, you know, it opens it up the world. Like I can literally serve anybody in the world. I can help anyone with what I do and deliver online. But now that human connection, there's like a gap, right? So when you're authentically and strategically building your personal brand online, it's just bringing that human connection back and saying, hey, while you're technically staring at a screen, looking at information and data of my website, I want you to feel like you're talking to me, to the human behind it. And that's that connection of the personal brand and why, like, having photos of you, like don't hide on like one about me bio off in the corner, right? They want to see and they want to feel like they have an idea of who you are. And the photos and the messaging, so the copy and the words and the way you say and what you talk about, pair it all together, brings your personality to life and makes people go, ooh, you are the person. And that's what personal branding is.
That makes complete sense. And so if I'm hearing you correctly, it's not so much that we're changing what we've been doing, it's just the how. And so we've been doing this all the time, but now with the advent of, the souped up internet, all the socials, and now we have Twitter changing their branding, Threads is out there. Yeah, I know. Really, like it's a different day, a different dollar. I feel like when it comes to social media right now, the field is changing so much. But being able
Yeah.
to put your brand out there and create that personal connection, it's always been there. It's just how we're doing it.
Yeah, if you want to do it in a way that you can market to the entire world, you have to do it in a way that the entire world can consume. And social media has made that easy, but it makes us, instead of like what used to be an authentic, like I'm just going to walk into this room and oh, look, Katie's standing right there and let me grab a drink and some nibbles and go and just stand next to her and start chit-chatting and we can have this conversation. Now it's a little bit more like, okay, I want to attract the people like Katie to my business because she would be the perfect clientele. What would she be interested in? What would align with her? What visuals and messaging would make her stop her scroll and go, interesting. And then think through what it is that she might want prior to, and then cultivate it and put it on our website, put it in our socials, so that instead of it being you and I have to be one-on-one together in a room, learning about each other, you can literally learn the same things and start to feel like you get to know me while you are binge watching Suits at midnight with your husband while scrolling through the phone, thinking about your business, right?
Never happens at my house. I don't know what goes on at your house, but that
Quite
never
literally happened last night at my house.
like every night at my house. For sure. There's someone who says, I hear you, but I'm so afraid to put myself out there. And I know I need to create the personal connection. I think, especially for designers, those homeowners that are looking to connect with you, they're looking to connect with you. There's thousands of people that can design their home. But why you? You have to be able to answer the why for them. And I think, to your point, it is about putting yourself out there so they can say, I choose you. But that can be kind of unnerving as a designer, and it kind of requires some guts and courage. How do you walk people through that to say it's worth it, you should do it, it's going to be okay?
So, first off, like we all sit there and go, I'm not a Kardashian. I don't want to be doing all of this stuff, right?
Totally, 100%. Nope, I do not have that body. Let's just get that out of the way
right.
right now.
To be fair, without lots of dollar bills, I don't think they have that body either. So, the interesting thing, and I think this is where a lot of people get overwhelmed, is that they're like, oh, okay, I have to cultivate and I have to show my life. I have to do all of these things. I have to become this like internet personality to attract people. And I want to make sure it's very clear. You being a personal brand does not mean you are an influencer or have to be an influencer or have to share anything about your personal life that you don't want to share. An influencer is a personal brand, but a personal brand is not meaning you're an influencer. So
distinction I think a lot of people miss. I feel like it's very easy to look at it as an all or nothing. Like I'm either out there or I'm not out there. And those are my only options.
Yes. Yeah. And it's like, okay, so think of it this way. The reason why, so I'm gonna lean us away from social media because social media is kind of a beast in its own, and say when you're starting your personal brand, start with your website. Your website is your digital storefront, right? It's where people are gonna go, oh, somebody told me about you, or I saw something on social, or I saw an article you were in. Somehow out in the world, somebody heard your name and they want to learn more and they come to your website, right? When you share your personality, share your interests, share your expertise, because as a designer, people are coming to you because they don't have your skill set. They want to know why you think this color is the next color that should be happening in the living rooms of the world, right? And why this other color is the absolute worst and you should never do it because it's going to make you look real dated in 5 years. Whatever your expertise is, right? They don't know, and they don't know what they don't know, right?
Very true.
So they want to hear your opinion and see if your opinion jives with what their opinion and their values and what's important to them are. Now, why you need to share your face and share your face a decent amount on your website is because if you think of how prior to the internet, how human beings interacted with each other. Let's say you and I had a consult and we met in person, and you wanted to hire me as a brand photographer. And we were chatting in person. You hadn't seen any of my portfolio, anything like that. You got a referral, whatever it is. We go to a Starbucks, we have a conversation. You and I are staring at each other more or less through an entire 30-minute conversation. You're looking at me and I'm looking at you. You might glance down at my portfolio to go through and basically just have that confirmation. Oh, yep, this aligns with what I was expecting.
She says she is. Yeah.
This doesn't look like complete crap. Delightful. This aligns with what I want. But for the most part, other than glancing down every little while, we're looking at each other because we're human beings, and we're gauging and we're checking body language. Oh, she keeps looking outside. It feels like she doesn't want to be here. Maybe she doesn't actually want me as a client. She feels really insecure. Oh my God, she is so funny and she is so nice. And it felt like we were just old friends chatting. I absolutely want to work with her because that was so easy. Like, those are all things that are happening in a one-on-one interaction that does not happen online. But the funny thing is about the human brain is the human brain is very advanced and also very basic. And
well said. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's like a little conundrum there. And the human brain can't really decipher, because photography and video and everything, to like how old our brains are, is relatively new. Like, it's 150 years old.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so when I'm looking at a photo of you on your website and I'm reading about the things of your values and your approach and how you do things and what matters to you and what the experience is going to be looking like while I'm seeing a photo of you, my brain makes it feel like I'm talking to you. And the more I see you, the more familiar you are. And the more familiar you are, the more likely it is that I'm going to build trust with you.
It's almost like we've had these conversations. Our brain interprets them as, oh, we've had all these conversations. When in reality, I may not have even heard the sound of your voice, or I have only seen, imagery of you. That's fascinating to think about.
Yeah.
How do you think you drill down? Because you're right, your brain is constantly processing, like, oh, this person's funny, or like you said, they're looking outside. Do they really want to be here? When it comes to building that client trust, how do you think we go about discovering what it is our target market is looking for? Because in marketing, we know we can't, if you're marketing to everyone, you're marketing to no one, right? We can't meet everybody's needs and wants in life. However, knowing our target market's needs and wants and what they're looking for is critical. How do you figure that out? And how do you incorporate that into your brand, do you feel like?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when it comes down to it, so this is where a lot of small businesses skip over, is the brand strategy. They go, oh, I need a brand. I need to pick my colors. I need to pick my font, my design. I need to make sure it looks pretty, and I have a logo. My brand is done.
I'm done.
Right?
Yeah.
I'm done.
Sorry. We're done and I'm out.
Yeah. And then people go, oh, say you fast forward 2 to 3 years in your business and you've got some traction, but things aren't quite right. You're trying all of these marketing tactics, but things feel like they're falling short. And then all of a sudden they're like, oh, I think it's because my brand needs a refresh. So I'm going to like change things up. So you see people
do all the same things again, just 5 years later. Yeah.
Just 5 years later to give it a brand new fancy look. Right. Well, that's like, yes, you can do that. But the thing is, the strategy portion, the thing that I love is the why behind, right? So like, so many people jump here onto the brand visuals, but really the foundations of your brand, why you're doing what you're doing, who you're doing it for, what it is that you're actually helping them with. Like, as interior designers, you are a vehicle to get somebody to their desire, but they're not hiring you because they want to hire a designer. The experience of working with you, they want it to be pleasant, they want it to be a good time, but if they could get their end goal without hiring you, they'd save a lot of money and do that, right?
Absolutely. That's why the DIY world is so big. And it doesn't always work out very well. And then we get the phone call.
Yeah, so the pendulum swing. Yeah. Absolutely. But the thing is that so many small businesses come into how they approach their clients as a look at my service, look at my service. And like your client's going to purchase your service to get their end result, but the service is not what you should be talking to them about, and why your messaging and your marketing and your brand visuals and things might fall flat. So like the strategy, the brand strategy portion is coming back and saying, okay, who is your ideal client? And like really diving in. Like I have strategy calls with my clients that are 2 hours long that we're just talking about your ideal client. And I always tell them, I'm like, we're going to start with things like the size of their house and the type of car that they drive. And if they shop at Lululemon or they shop at Nordstrom, and people always go, oh, but why does it matter? Well,
it matters. Yeah.
It matters because it's building a person in your head that goes, okay, well, if you're, shopping at Lululemon versus Nordstrom, you care about how you look, but you also care about functionality and comfort. And you care more about maybe fitness, but like functionality while looking put together more so than looking like fully to do, right? And that tells you where somebody's brain is at and what matters to them and their values. And then down, you keep on like peeling the onion away to get down to what I always tell my clients. I'm like, we're going to talk about these 15 to 20 different things to get down to the most important questions. What are their core desires, their core motivations, and their core fears?
The why.
Why. Yeah. And that's the strategy part that then you go, okay, I know how I want to show up in the world. I know what I want people to say and think about me. I know what matters to the people that I'm trying to attract. Now, let's create the messaging and the visuals that will attract that type of person and convey that message. And when you do that, which is not easy work, I'll be frank, it's not simple.
Deep analysis, but you have to do it or you're not going to have an audience and they're not going to write you a chat.
They're not going to pay attention. And then they're going to look and say, oh, okay, you're an interior designer and you're an interior designer. They're also sitting on their couch at 10 p.m. The kids have gone to bed. They have 5 interior designers tabs open on their desk or their laptop, and they're trying to figure it out, right?
Yep.
When you understand your messaging and your ideal client and you've shown your face on your website, they're clicking between and they're seeing to the layman different design portfolios that look probably in the vicinity of 95% the same.
Yeah. They're well curated. They're polished. Sure.
Yeah. They look good, but like to a client, they're going to be like, I don't know what makes this different from that. Right. And if you don't explain it, then they're going to do what we're all going to do, because our brains are hardwired to make comparisons. Do you want a TikTok where
I like TikToks. I'm there for TikToks and TikToks.
Do you want a Tic Tac or a gum, right? A piece of gum. Like your brain is making that, which one works better for me? And they're doing that when they're like this designer or that designer. And if you don't give them something like your personality or talking about what matters to them, not your service, but like having a home that fully showcases their aesthetics and some place that they can have pride in and they can show off and they can really live their life in the way that they imagine being able to. That's what you're selling, is that feeling of pride and joy. Yeah. Not the paint color. The paint color is just a tactic to get there. And if you're talking about that and they're looking at a human being via your photo and they go, oh, okay, I get what Katie is saying here. And then I have this person that look, the sites, the design looks good, but there's no like distinction of what makes them different, or they don't know who the person is that they're learning about. Those 2 other sites, what they're going to do is say, okay, what's the best price? Because they look similar enough to me, but now if I'm happy with either options, let's go for who can either do it the fastest or the cheapest.
We know you don't get the best with either one of those, but yes.
No. And then if you then have a site where you have content that speaks to helping educate them. You have photos of you and behind the scenes, like when you and I did your branding photos.
Yep.
So I did Katie's branding photos for her website.
Was
We
so much
thought
fun,
through.
which I would have
It was a
never
lot of fun.
thought was actually going to be fun, because I'm one of those people that's like, nope, just happy over here running my business. No need to look any further. So that's why I
Oh
wanted
my
to
God.
have this conversation, because I'm talking to myself and going, oh yes, this is why I did what I did, but it was hard. You had to talk me into it.
Well, a good brand photographer will sit there and go, okay, what are we doing? Why are we doing? And then like the focus, like what I strive for when I do brand photos with clients is to make it a fun experience, right?
It was a blast.
Because
Yeah.
you remember the experience. And if you're relaxed and having a good experience, then the pictures are going to be good too. And it doesn't matter how beautiful the photo is. If you had a crappy experience, you're not going to enjoy those photos and you're not going to want to put them out in the world, right?
Very fair point.
Yeah. So it's the education of your client and letting them know and saying, hey, okay, this is what this means, or this is what to expect. Or they're like, I've never hired a designer before. I don't have any idea what the process is. And then you're like, hey, book a call. And then they're like, oh, if I book a call with you, does that mean that I'm definitely booking you? I'm not ready. Like even that simple thing of you're like, it's a free consultation. They're like, does that mean I
When
have
am I
to? Like,
obligated? Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. So when you think through your client and say, okay, you're a novice, how can I help hold your hand through this while showing you photos of myself? Because then you know who's holding your hand. It makes you stand apart. And then all of a sudden they're comparing the other people and they go, okay, well, their stuff looks good, but her stuff looks good and she looks like she knows how to help me through this process. And say you're 20% more expensive, 50% more expensive. They go, oh, but the experience here is going to be better. I think this is a better value for my money.
Yeah, I
And
understand
all of a
that I'm
sudden,
buying, not just pie in the sky, or I have a vision. I actually understand the value of what I'm getting. There's a process, there's a why, and this looks like a lovely person I can connect with.
exactly.
So let
Exactly.
me ask
And
you,
then
oh, go for it.
one extra bonus part is that you are doing all of that work currently. I'm going to assume your listeners are doing all of that work on the sales call. And that's why the sales call is painful, because they feel like they're like a broken record. They have to say the same thing. They don't know if they said it right, or they're trying to connect, but they're also trying to convey all of this information. And then,
yeah,
which is a lot. And then the client's overwhelmed. They ingested a small portion of it because not everybody's an auditory learner. They're like, I don't know exactly what's going on.
yeah.
And then you're like, oh, I got nothing. Like I don't have a high enough conversion rate for my sales calls. For me, especially with my brand photography side of things, I've conveyed so much on my website and helped walk people through so much that by the time that they have said, yes, let's have a call, it is are you what I think you are? Because like, I'm convinced you are this person from your website. I'm going to get on the phone with you. Yeah. And say, okay, now are we available? Can we make this work in our timeframes? And where do I sign? So like my sales calls rarely are sales. It's more of a like, get to know you and when can we do this?
Yep, that's exactly how ours went. And I think that's such smart strategy from a business perspective to put it out there. I think there's a lot of designers too that are afraid of giving away their secret sauce. The reality is there's plenty of business for everybody. You do you, boo, as I tell my kids. You do you, and the right people will show up for it. The right clients are going to show up that are going to have this connection with you, that are going to think like you think and feel like you feel. And I think to put that out there and to say, and to be bold about, this is who I am, this is what I have to offer you, and not worry about the revelation of the secret sauce or whatnot, actually is a huge confidence builder. And your potential client on the other side feels that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So speaking of kids, let's talk about kids. You have a couple of kids. How have you gathered this body of knowledge and become this juggernaut for all things brand while running a family and doing all the things? This is the conversation I love to have, because I think it's so easy as women to differentiate our personal and our professional lives. And the reality is I feel like it's a big pile of spaghetti and meatballs. It's all blending together. It's sloppy. It's saucy. especially if you ask my 9-year-old, I can be real sassy and saucy. But tell us how is it working for you, and what have you found works for you in this stage of life when it comes to marrying those two worlds together?
Yeah, it's interesting because I know there's a lot of women who start their business post motherhood, and trying to figure it out, how to run a business at the same time as trying to figure out how to be a mom. Because, like, let's be real, none of us. It's all like a dark room with a flashlight, being like, "Well, how do I get out? What do I do?"
I know they don't send you home from the hospital with an instruction manual. It's the darndest thing. Like, really, you're letting me walk out with a live human and no direction. This is
And
epic.
no directions.
Who
I don't
thought
even
this
know
was
how
a
to get
good
them in
idea?
the seat.
Yeah, totally.
Uh, so it's been a journey. I feel I've got a slightly different story in that I got a degree in commercial photography and started my photography business in 2005, directly out of college. So I knew right off the bat, I was like, I'm either going to get a 9 to 5. This is pre-kids. I'm either going to get a 9 to 5 and get real comfortable with this constant paycheck, or I need to jump in the deep end and learn how to swim. And that's, I think, jumping in the deep end and learning how to swim is a good motto of my entire life.
I understand that. I love that. I think everyone can
I'm
relate,
like, oh,
but not everyone's brave enough to say so, for sure.
Right. So by the time, I had already been running my business for, let me do some quick math, 2005, my son was born in 2011. So 6 years. So like I understood what I was doing before I brought children into the mix, but I've done quite a bit of pivots in my business. And the balance, there's no real balance.
I love that statement. I still love that statement because I feel like everyone thinks if I'm doing this right as a parent, running a business or a career, this should be easy, because when things are balanced, they feel good, right?
Mm-hmm.
I often feel like a rabid squirrel straddling a really uncomfortable wood fence. Like, there are things that fall off on both sides on any given day, right? Which is why
Mm-hmm.
I am so thankful for our team, and we have a
Mm-hmm.
great bevy of people. But there's times the laundry is piling up, or the kids are like, "What's for dinner?" And I'm like, "Well, if we steam some broccoli, does it make the goldfish not look so damning? Because that might be
Right.
what you're getting today." I mean, I think
Right.
it's a hustle and a juggle. And I don't know anyone who's perfectly balancing it. But there's definitely
Anyone on Instagram who says they are is blowing some
lying.
smoke up your rear.
They're lying, and we cannot be friends.
Mm-hmm.
I just
Right.
say that for the
Right.
record. We cannot be
Yeah.
friends. But I think picking your priorities and knowing when to hold them and when to fold them is a huge thing, both
Mm-hmm.
from a business and a personal perspective. Like, how did you prioritize, like, yeah, the laundry may fall apart, but I'm going to make sure my kids get tucked in tonight? Or how has that worked for you personally?
Yeah, I actually made a large pivot in my business. When I started my business, I was wedding photographer, is where I landed originally. Before I understood anything about personal branding, I can go a little bit into like actually how I fell into that and shifted to brand photography and then added brand strategy to bring me into this world. But as a wedding photographer, I had a very successful business. There are peaks and valleys, and um, it was a great. I was a full time, like, I always laugh because when people are like, "Oh yeah, so and so's a photographer too," I was like, "Oh no, like legitimately, like I made 6 figures. It was my only income. Like legit, like this was my entire business." As a wedding photographer. And then I hit a point where my son was just under 5 and my daughter was just about 2. And I was realizing that because summers are insane, I live in the Pacific Northwest. So like wedding season is summer season, that I was missing all of my family's momentous moments so that I could be at other people's momentous moments capturing theirs. And I hit a point where I was like, I only have a limited amount of summers and time with my children. And, I'm super available during the day, during the week, because the way that my business was structured, but nights and weekends, I was always away. And I was like, that's family time.
Happening. Yeah.
Yeah.
Growing up.
So I recognized it and I realized I was like, I need to make a change. I need to make a pivot. Because I wanted to be here and available for my family. I wanted to bring my business into more of a, because like my kids were about to go to school full time. I was like, I want to be able to get most of my work done in the hours that they're at school, and be available on weekends. And if I back up just a little bit, before I had made this decision, a couple of years prior, I'd kind of fallen into building a personal brand in my photography business. So I'll go into that to kind of give a little context, which is what made me say, ooh, maybe brand photography is the direction I want to go in. So I was a wedding photographer and I was doing the things that I was just saying not to do. All of my advice, I was doing all of the things where I was like, oh, my website, I had a picture of me on my about page, but I didn't have a lot of like content or a lot of context on my website. I just had really beautiful photos because, like, not to toot my own horn, but I'm a good photographer. I can put really good pictures up on the website, and then brides and grooms would go and I would get inquiries, and they'd go to my website, they'd get inquiries, but I'm also not an inexpensive photographer. So I would get responses back from people saying, oh, well, thanks so much, but we went a different route. And it always came back to money. And I started like diving in and like, what's my problem? What's my roadblock? How do I get past the roadblock? And so like, I read like all of the marketing books, all of the psychology books, all the sales books to be like, what's missing? And I recognized as like me. Because like if I talk to all of my clients at the end of the day after their wedding, they'd be like, Becca, like the experience of working with you is like unlike anything else. Like you were our best vendor. You feel like you're like friends. Like I'm still friends with people I photographed their wedding 15 years ago. Right.
Amazing.
And I was like, okay, if every one of my clients that had hired me and in the past said that you are the difference, I looked at my website and I was like, I don't show up at all.
I'm not the difference
anyway
of my marketing. So how would anyone ever know that until after the fact? And that's not what I need them to know. I mean, it's great, but I need them to know on the front end. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I started making shifts and I started putting pictures of myself on my website, which as a photographer felt a little funny because I'm like, aren't I supposed to be showing you the beautiful pictures I can take of you? But again, when it comes down to just like how I was telling you, for a design portfolio, like your clients, you're looking at 2 different design portfolios, and unless they're drastically different styles, they're not going to notice the difference between one person to the other. So I started adding more of my personality, more of my, like, this is what the experience will be like working with me. This is what it means. Like, you want family photos, and this is what like a reality of family photos. Like I was educating, I was blogging, I was doing things to be like, how can I help you understand this process? Because I've been to 500 of these things, and this is your first one for a bride, right?
Sure.
And then I changed I was shortly after having Scarlett, and I was breastfeeding, and you're like ravenous when you're breastfeeding, and I was eating entirely way too many Oreos. I was like, don't care, nutrition, knockout, like give me, like I'm hungry.
Oreos. Double stuff is my friend. Yeah.
Yeah. So everyone who knows me well was always laughing because I was like, she's like, oh, Becca and the Oreos again. I was like, I can eat an entire sleeve of Oreos while like a day. It's fine. I'm breastfeeding. Everything's fine. I decided to change my package names to different kinds of Oreos. It was like Oreos and milk, and the Oreo milkshake or whatever, which made it different than the silver gold and like whatever that everyone else is doing.
Yeah.
And I stopped getting the, are you available for my date? And, oh, you're too expensive for me, to, oh my God, Becca, you have to be available for me. Here's my date. I cannot wait to talk with you. And everyone was booking. And I sit there and I was like,
Oreos. Really?
Oreos and my face, right? They felt like they knew me, but it was probably the Oreos.
No, I think it was both. It's interesting. It's like Malcolm Gladwell talks about in his book, Tipping Point, but there's just those moments where it's just this teeniest little shift, and it just literally becomes the tipping point. I mean, to put yourself out there, reading your package, and that really is reflective of your personality and who you are, and people get an insight into you, and then boom, you're there.
Right. Then it made me, they're like, oh, the Oreo girl. And like, she seems like she's a lot of fun, which was the whole premise. Cause my whole approach to weddings was like, we're going to make sure you have a great day. I was like, at the end of the day, as long as both of you show up and both of you say yes and sign a piece of paper, Everything else is icing on the cake. Let's have a good time.
Yep.
Like, it doesn't matter if something goes wrong. Like, it's about the experience. And so like I cultivated that so that they would have a great time. So
I think
in that
that's so
shift,
valuable. That's so valuable.
yeah.
People in the design
And
world. Yeah.
people were, all of a sudden I was like crazy booked and things. And I was like, oh my God, there's something to this. Like, I didn't know it was personal branding at the time. I learned it after a while, but I was like, there is something to this, because this became really easy. And then we fast forward, a short period of time forward, when I was like, I don't want to do weddings anymore. I've done this for 12 years. I'm ready to like pivot.
My weekends back. Yeah. Have my evenings back, but I
Yeah.
still want to have fun because that's who I am. I just need a new
Yeah.
outlet for it. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I pivoted into brand photography, mostly because I was like, I understood it and I started realizing and recognizing the strategy behind how it works. But I did it because people want photos during business, like normal business hours. If you're a company, you usually want me to show up between 9 and 5, and that allows me to have time for my kids.
Yeah.
So,
because they're how old now? Now we are.
so
9.
Scarlett is 9. My daughter is 9. She's about to go into 4th grade, and my son is 12 and a half, about to go into 7th grade. He's like almost as tall as me, and I am not ready for that.
I am not having it. I am so not having it.
I'm not
feel you
so
in
not
that.
having it.
So looking back, like, well, I want to get to that. And that's one of our rapid fire questions we're going to get to in just a hot minute. But looking back, are you glad that you made that transition, and has it yielded what you thought you would yield, in that you can say, yes, I'm really glad I embraced my brand, figured out who I was, and was unashamed and unabashedly put that forward?
Yeah, absolutely. It changed. It made sales easy. It allowed me to pivot because I was still just putting my personality out there. No longer am I talking to brides. Now I'm talking to small businesses. But I took that knowledge of like, okay, how can I help them? How can I convey to them why these images are matter? Why good photos matter? And then I would start doing the strategy behind it. And that's kind of like COVID made it real easy, because COVID hit and like I didn't take pictures for a couple of years because COVID. And that's what allowed me to develop the brand strategy portion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Except for
And now I ate a lot of Oreos, played a lot of card games. But now I do a lot of brand strategy, helping people, because the other big pivotal part was I took a course on copywriting, because I didn't understand prior to like how messaging and stuff mattered. And I took a course, and that's another, like, when a door opened where I was like, oh my God, I have one half of this down pat, but like understanding how to share your personality, how to share your perspective, how to use words to then align with your visuals, so people look at your stuff and go, oh my God, I have to have you, is a beautiful and powerful thing. And when I learned how to put them together, I was laughing, because I'm like, I'm not a copywriter because I am too fucking wordy. Excuse that out. But I am really good at messaging, saying this is what we're talking about, why we're talking about it, and this is what you want to say. And now you need to take it to a copywriter so they use less words.
And so yes, I appreciate that. Oh, this is such a good conversation. Okay. Are you ready for our lightning round as we wrap up?
I am.
Rounds, just because I think it's just fun to be able to hear other people's perspective on things. Okay. So tell us, what is a book that has most changed your life or your business, or both?
I actually have it right here. It's an old school one, but it's called The Psychology of Selling.
Ooh,
so much of the work that I do roots down to psychology of like, that's what brand strategy and everything is why people make the actions they do, and understanding what makes people want to make a selling action or a purchasing action, and understanding how the brain works through it was like eye-opening.
Yeah, it's the why again. When we can answer the why, we have a way to move forward, I feel like.
Yeah.
Beautiful. So, what piece of advice would you have told yourself when you were 20?
So I started my business when I was 22. So I've kind of been in this world a long time, but I'm just about to turn 40, and I just recently got diagnosed with ADHD, and it has made my entire life make sense. So if I were to go back, I would say go figure that portion out, because your life will be a lot easier for you if you connect those dots.
Absolutely. And I think mental health in general. I love that we are taking the shame and the hide out of mental health and how our brains work. Everyone's brains work differently, whether you have a diagnosis or not. We all have eccentricities. The more we can learn about ourselves, the younger we are,
The more you understand
the better
how
off.
your brain works, right? So it's not like oh, I'm bad because, or I'm failing because. It's like, oh, my brain doesn't really work really great here. So like, let's stop trying to go from A to B. Maybe I need to go to A to B to C to get to the same spot. And then I'm there and it works just fine, right? It's that compassion and that understanding. And that's probably like, to go back to the parenting struggle. Like, I realized I had ADHD when all of a sudden the structures I'd built around myself and my business collapsed, when all of a sudden I was now kids virtually schooling and trying to work and trying to change my business, like all of that happening at the same time. And my brain basically like leaked out my ear.
Yeah.
It's like, something's wrong.
I can so relate to that undiagnosed, but there were so many pressures all at once coming in from all sides that to keep
Yeah.
any wheels on the bus, not all the wheels. No, that for sure wasn't going to happen, but any of the wheels on the bus. What a thing. I mean,
Yeah.
what a thing.
It was
Speaking
definitely
of keeping wheels on the bus, what is your best time management hack?
So I'm a bit, one of the things I learned about my ADHD, I get time blind when I'm like really into what I'm doing. So I have this little thing. So like it sits on my desk and I go, okay. And all the time, it's usually to the 30-minute, I just flip it and it starts going, and I can't see how much time is left, but then it will start beeping at me 30 minutes later. And it just lets me be aware of the time passing and go, oh, I spent 30 minutes on this. I was meaning to spend 10. I need to wrap it up and move to the next thing. Because if I don't do that, I will get into a rabbit hole and I'm like, oh, I just spent 3 hours on something that I meant to spend 20 minutes on. Oopsies.
I feel like all creatives can do that. When I'm in my sweet spot, my husband will sometimes walk in and be like, you've been there for 2 hours. I'm like, you don't say.
Yeah. I
That
had
2
no idea.
hours just right by. Like,
My husband always laughs when I'm like, oh yeah, just one more minute. He goes, can you turn your little purple thing for the 5-minute maybe? I'm like,
that little purple cube timer thing. Yeah. We need that.
And then the 5 minutes go and I go, well, how did that happen so fast? What?
I can so relate to that.
That, and then as I'm continuing to grow my team, utilizing Slack and ClickUp, and then automations. I just added a bunch, but those are the things that I'm
great.
like, yes.
Automations and systems, because systems work when you don't. People get sick. Systems don't get sick. These types of things, like, yes, I hear you 100% for that. I think they're so incredibly valuable, and it's going to be so interesting to see where AI takes all of that. I'm just so intrigued. It's going to be fascinating.
Yeah. Yes, agreed.
All right, folks, that's a wrap. Thank you for joining us for another insightful episode of Colorful Conversations with Katie. I hope you enjoyed our discussion today with Becca and found valuable insights to help you thrive in your design business and life as we merge them together here. To all of our listeners, thank you for joining us on this journey of learning and growth, and your enthusiasm and dedication to honing your business skills as design professionals. It inspires me to keep bringing you valuable content. So remember to describe. Yes, we love to describe in the world of design, but we want you to subscribe rather to our podcast so you never miss an episode. If you have any questions or topics you'd like me to cover in the future, please let me know. I want to make sure we're getting the content out that does help you. If you would like one-on-one time with me, I would love to discuss your firm and plan intentional steps for growth and success. You can book a call with me on our website at www.colorworks.coach. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.